Hi guys, welcome back.
Hello.
Okay, so this is a really exciting episode because we have our first returning guest, and she is the reigning queen of our most popular episode to date, and you all love her. Jordan Shomer, your astrologer friend, is back.
Woo!
Hi, Jordan.
What's up? Also,
The glowing
I want to
goddess.
say that being the reigning queen really speaks to me in a deep and profound way. So I hope to keep the title. I'll do whatever I can. Literally.
Not just the queen, it's the reigning queen.
Reigning
Absolutely.
queen.
An active queen, yes.
Jordan, I'll do whatever I can to
I
keep
will.
it.
Oh, I will. With no shame.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. I respect that. We all know you'll be back again after this anyway.
Yep.
But, so, needless to say why we might want an astrologer's perspective right now, because shit is crazy. And I know there's a lot of different directions we could go with this. There's a lot of things we can touch on whatever comes up, but how people deal with this and based on their own astrology all the way to big picture, what the world, if this was, so to speak, written in the stars, what you saw, what you think, expect for the future based on your knowledge. I kind of want to just get into all of it because we all are just flailing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly are. I guess I want to start with, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but I just want to start with mentioning the most basic, most cliche principle of astrology, which is as above, so below, as within, so without, which means that our experience, though unique to us and personalized to our unique experience in, being a person in the world, is also reflected in the experience of the collective, just as what is happening in the sky is reflected in our material experience. So simply to say, this was written in the stars. I wouldn't say it was written as specifically as global pandemic.
Right.
But I've been practicing for almost 2 years. And since I started just gathering my astrological knowledge and following different astrologers, the thing that everyone has been talking about is 2020. Just wait until
all astrologers?
Yeah. One of my favorite astrologers, Jessica Lanyadoo, who has an incredible weekly podcast called Ghost of a Podcast, where she gives the weekly forecast. She started her podcast about 1.5 years ago. And in her first episode, she said she wanted to build a following so that she could help guide us through 2020.
Before it happened, because she just knew it was going to be something big.
Yeah. And it's all I've heard. And I didn't really have the understanding or the knowledge or the context to be able to wrap my head around what that really meant.
Yeah.
But seeing where we are now, it's very clear that this is part of our collective journey.
Yeah. Was there a sign that it was going to be a negative thing or just that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
God.
This year started with a collision between two planets, Saturn and Pluto. And these two planets come together about every 30 years. And in astrology, Saturn rules limitations and structures. It's the planet that rules hierarchies, the government, patriarchy and capitalism. It also rules karma. It's a very ancient energy. And Pluto is the destroyer. Pluto also represents our soul. And so when these two planets come together, it's an indication that there is a soul level karmic reckoning to deal with, to face, or that's being excavated.
Yeah.
And the last time these two planets came together, about 30 years ago.
When we were all being born, basically.
Yeah. But when these two planets came together last time was when we saw the AIDS epidemic. The time before that was the rise of Hitler. The time before that was World War I. And so the patterns and the signatures of these two planets coming together are that of power struggles and death and destruction.
Wow.
Yeah. And on top of that, this year we have the planets of Pluto and Jupiter colliding in the sky. And when those two planets come together, we face psychological splitting. So it is the belief that anyone who's not on your side is against you. And it's this very black and white mentality that
very divided.
Yes. And it also brings up big pieces, like it reveals big pieces of truth. And so what we're experiencing is not only our own soul karmic reckoning, where on a collective level, our culture and our society is being faced with our shadow in a way where we're being tasked to reconcile all of the things that we have pushed into shadow, which we have repressed or denied. Those things are bubbling up, and we are, because of Jupiter and Pluto, we are seeing things in a way that we can't come back from. We're seeing all the cracks in the foundations and all of the pieces of our culture that we've sort of like stuck a Band-Aid over, and we were like, nah, that'll do.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really have to look at all of it because everything was moving so fast.
Exactly. And like, and that's what's happening now is we're seeing the breakdown of the machine of capitalism. And we're seeing it in a way, we're seeing it in like in a detached way, where we're not a part of the work. We're not all of us. There are essential workers who are still having to risk their lives to go to work. But on a larger scale, we're not as entrenched in the routine of this machine. Right. So we're kind of set apart to be able to observe it. And really, and the rest of the astrology happening right now is very internal. We're really being asked to turn inward. And in doing so, we're kind of reevaluating if the systems that we've set up for ourselves, both internally and externally, are really working for us.
Yeah, I have had a conversation with you, Jordan, but just about realizing, and I didn't think about this like 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in. We're like 8 weeks into this now, pretty much. And I'm realizing that areas where I previously took for granted that I had certain things figured out about as far as how to take care of myself. Like, I mean, even down to like my daily life before all this happened was crazy busy, like working multiple jobs, freelancing, working on my album. I'm like running around like crazy. And I had figured out within that structure how to take care of myself, how to eat well, how to stay active, how to basic things like adulting, basically, like how to take care of. And I'm kind of speaking more literally like my physical body, how to take care of myself. I had figured it out within that structure. And you would think that having more free time and everything could only make that easier. But I'm realizing like all of that structure gets stripped away. And I've realized over the last couple weeks, like, oh, maybe I'm not as solid in certain areas as I thought I was. Like, yes, I had it figured out under that structure, but now that it's all removed, I'm a little bit like, wait, how do I do these basic things again? Like 1 week I'll have it feeling pretty good. The next week I'm like off the rails in certain areas, whether it's my sleep schedule or just like eating shit food or like not moving around as much as I want. It's like basic stuff, but it's really apparently not. It's things that we all like, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. It's like we all kind of think it's like our egos are bigger than what the reality of it is, where it's like, no, we don't all have our shit together. We just, there was a structure around us holding it up, and now that structure's gone. And now we're like, oh my God, like, what is this?
Yeah. And what we're moving into, the way I'm feeling into it is really the collapse of capitalism. And this is sort of our glimpse into an alternative. Not to say that this is what the future will look like, because no living, breathing human being has any idea what the future will look like. But I do know for certain it will not look like what we've always known.
Yeah. So what's your impression of, when people, of course, it's not going to be like it was, but when people say stuff like that, when things go back to normal, or like, what do you think about that?
Well, the first thing I think to myself is, oh, sweetie, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there are so many astrological signals that are telling us that what we're moving through now is transforming us on an individual and collective level in a way we cannot come back from. So, for example, we're dealing a lot with Saturn right now. Saturn on March 21st. So I'm in Chicago. Chicago got locked down on March 19th, like officially.
Mm-hmm.
And March 21st, the planet Saturn, who rules structures, limitations, karma, and time, moved into the sign of Aquarius, out of Capricorn, where he's been for the last about 3 years. And the energy of Capricorn is very linear and rigid and grounded and predictable. But the energy of Aquarius is very abstract and very unpredictable.
Just like me and you, Aquarius friend.
Yeah, but just to hear people, as we've been in quarantine, be like, what is time? What even is it? Is so aligned with the collective experience of time right now, because we're dealing with energy we haven't dealt with in 29 years. And so none of us are familiar with what this quality of time feels like. And it's really jarring, especially when we are forced into our home, which is also written in the stars. So we just had a shift, a nodal shift, and the nodes of the moon are our collective experience. It's on a personal level, it's your soul's journey. So the south node is what needs to be released from your past lives. The north node is what you're taking in, what you're trying to cultivate. And for the last 18 months, the North Node has been in the sign of Cancer. And Cancer is the sign of care and family and home. It's where you came from. And the South Node sits opposite in Capricorn. And Capricorn rules capitalism, patriarchy, society,
structure.
All of it rules the world we live in now. And so what we're seeing is the crumbling and the releasing of so much of this toxic Capricorn energy that we've been operating under, and being called to come home to ourselves in the most literal way. And I think that especially the topic of self-care will be a really, really big one come the next new moon, which will be, should have got the date, but I can't remember. It'll be the new moon in Cancer, beginning of July.
Okay.
And or the end of June. Forgive me. But new moon in Cancer will be a solar eclipse. And that means that the moon and the sun will be sitting right on top of that north node, which is calling us back home, calling us to care for ourselves. But not only to care for ourselves, but to understand what self-care is, period, the end. Not self-care through the lens of capitalism. Not how can I care for myself so I can participate in this machine, or so that I can go through my schedule and be efficient and be productive.
Because that's what it always was. It was that, and like, listen, I'm not knocking skincare because I'm fucking obsessed, but like that's always what you see online when people talk about self-care. It's face masks and baths, and I love those things, but self-care is more painful than that. Self-care is more like weighty and heavy. It's like journaling, or it's different for everyone. But I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but I know that you and I have had this conversation, Jordan, where like what you're saying, but people are being forced now to reach to a deeper level when they consider what self-care is.
Right. And self-care, the way it's like projected up until now, I mean, I'm hoping that it will change, but I'll lead the charge if I have to. The reason it's so like entrenched in face masks and bath bombs and all that shit is capitalism.
Yeah.
We are in this space where we have this compulsion to try to monetize on any little buzzword we can.
Well, and it's focused on physical looks, all of those things,
Yeah.
under the guise of like, why don't you meditate while you're in the bath? Or like, great, but
Right.
really you're trying to get me to buy this nice bath oil for my
Yeah,
skin.
I need to make you feel worse, so you buy my product.
Exactly.
But what is happening right now is we are really being faced because of isolation, because we're not really seeing that many people. We're not exposed in the way that makes us so hyper aware of our external experience that we're forced to turn inward and to understand what self-care truly is. Self-care is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is how we keep ourselves alive.
Yeah, it's not like some extra thing. It shouldn't be some extra thing that you only elite populations have access to.
Yeah. And self-care in the framework of Cancer and this eclipse very much looks like, how can I care for myself, fill myself up so I can care for others? It is an altruistic care. It is not selfish. It is not narcissistic. It has nothing to do with how you look. I think that skincare is amazing. I think that, I love it too, but it's actually not self-care. It's simply
body
skincare.
care.
Yeah,
It's just
the opposite.
skincare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what we are being asked to do is much deeper and much more collectively aware. Because Cancer, especially that energy we are being asked to like take in and cultivate and digest, is the archetype of mother. And it is a give and take, a symbiotic relationship between those and those around us. How can we care for ourselves so we can be a caretaker for others?
And
So-
I want. Oh
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no. Please finish.
So we have that energy happening with the new moon. And then we have another eclipse at the full moon, which is more focused on Capricorn energy. And that I think will actually be really uncomfortable for us because we are being asked to relinquish control in a lot of ways. And that's been a process we're like chipping away at right now. And I think a lot of people, the people who are feeling the most discomfort in these new circumstances, are those people who cannot surrender their ego to know that they're not in control, whether they want control or not, whether that feels comfortable or not. Control is an illusion.
Yeah.
And those people are really being tasked to learn how to surrender, how to humble themselves, to know that in the big scheme of things, we know nothing.
Yeah.
And if anything, cultivating curiosity is what right now we're being asked to do in Gemini season with this Gemini moon that just happened. This Gemini new moon was really like the portal into all of this Gemini energy. We have the sun moving through Gemini, which is all of the collective vital energy. And then we have the planet Mercury at home. Mercury rules the sign of Gemini, which is also our mind. So our mind is being introduced to nuance and complexity in a very cerebral way. It's not necessarily like a heart-focused way, but it's a very curious and very like effervescent way. And then we have Venus, the planet of love and attraction and beauty and values, retrograde, so moving backwards in the sign of Gemini. And all of this Gemini energy is asking us to be curious and remember that nothing is just one thing. Everything is everything. And there are not two sides to every story. There are 1,000 sides to every story. And how can we, from a detached place, get curious about all of those stories?
Oh, gosh,
That's so cool.
It reminds me too when you're talking about like people, how we're faced with this with this issue of not being able to relinquish control. And in my mind, I just think of, and I know there's so many different examples of this, but to me, an extreme one is people protesting and not wanting to wear masks and completely like rebelling against this I don't know, infringement on their rights, as they like to say. And it boggles my mind that people can be so selfish right now
and so small. Honestly, if the biggest infringement on your rights has been being told to stay home for your health and protection and wearing a mask, have you never you've obviously never considered the position of anybody of color, any woman, I mean, you must just be a white man. And I know a lot of white men who don't think that way. So it's like, who are these people? Like, how can you really be that? That's the biggest infringement on your rights that you've ever experienced. Wow. I could only wish to be you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm just so disappointed in humanity right now. And I just don't know how to feel about it.
I wonder, I'd like to hear your thought on that, Jordan, because I vacillate too between that, Alyssa, like being disgusted and sick of humanity and disappointed in us. And then also having the optimism of like seeing the way that people are actually, there's no way to judge if people are succeeding, but they're trying to figure out what this time means, what they should be doing with it, re-examining. I see people doing all those things too. And then I'm like grateful to be, to witness this and to be a part of it. But I don't know which side is stronger because it changes day to day. And I see both. I see all the sides of it.
Well, and that's the thing. Everything is everything. So we are all having our own personal experience. We're all having to grapple with facing ourselves. That's the purpose of being pushed to this place, to really face our shadow. And what we do with that is a personal reaction.
Yeah.
But I think that especially in Gemini season, the sign of duality, this is a time where we can remember that we can hold both fear and hope at the same time. We can hold both pain and pleasure at the same time. It's not one or the other. But when it comes to the people who cannot relinquish their ego, oftentimes those are people who are operating under scarcity mentality. And scarcity mentality is the inherent belief that there isn't enough to go around. And so the themes or the patterns of that are hoarding resources, toilet paper. Why in the world would anyone buy 40 rolls of toilet paper? But these people have this inherent belief, just because they haven't challenged it. It's not a natural, like, I don't think that scarcity is like a natural human instinct. I think it's something that is learned and conditioned in us. But they have this inherent fear that there isn't enough for them. So they're going to take what they can get. And if they can get 40 rolls of toilet paper, then that makes them feel better. But the thing about it is, whether you're operating under scarcity mentality or not, whether you're so rooted in your ego that you can't deal with uncertainty, so you're clawing back to the past, to what is familiar to you,
to try to gain any kind of control. Yeah.
And like, I say this all with this strong belief that I truly feel like we are all doing the best with what we have. I do feel that if you are a person who is willing to challenge your known patterns and you're willing to turn inward, you're willing to do some shadow work and really sit with the parts of yourself that you have disassociated from. Because that's a natural human thing too. We are so complex and there's so much of us that it's impossible for us to hold every piece of ourself at once. So we push parts of it away, the parts that might not be fully acceptable, the parts that, we see somewhere else and you're like, oh, you can hold this part of me. And so we project that onto them. And that is a natural human thing.
So interesting.
But the willingness to rein some of those pieces of you back in just to make sense of them, to see what they have to offer you, to see what they're telling you, I think is what makes the difference between the people who are really struggling during this time and the people who, you know, are still struggling. Everyone is struggling, but they see a way out. And the way out is just like the future.
And the way out is in. Like I keep saying that, or seeing that places, and it's played out, but it's true. And what I think is really interesting is that like this time is forcing what we do with these thoughts or realizations is up to us. So we don't have to evolve. If we don't want to, we won't. You know what I mean? But everybody was moving so fast that only the people who consciously chose to pay attention to what's happening inside them would have some idea of what's happening. Like I like to think that I do. I'm constantly, at the end of the day, I'm wondering how I feel or why I feel that way, or I write in my journal throughout quote unquote normal life before this happened. Super busy, but I'm trying to figure that stuff out still. Now that it stopped, it's like even people who stayed as busy as they could, always with people, so they don't have to be alone with their thoughts. Those people now are they still don't have to dig into it, but they're going to be hit in the face with like having to like, oh my God, I feel sad right now, or, oh, I feel overwhelmed, or because there's so many people that move through life without even giving themselves room or time to acknowledge that, let alone decide to like figure out why you feel sad. Cause that's a decision. You still, even today, you can be at home by yourself and decide not to go into that. But my point is that even people who have done everything in life to avoid feeling and thinking are now stripped away of all of those devices. And it's just like, shit. And everybody is. And like I said, I try to keep a finger on the pulse of how I'm feeling and why, but when you're doing so much, a lot goes by you. And then now it's just like days will, you only have so much going on. And so you can't really ignore it. If you're like, why do I feel good or bad? Like, oh man, I'm like energetic and productive today. This is great. And I notice it because I have time and space to notice it. Or I'd feel like crying and nothing happened and I don't know what's going on. And I'm noticing this. I don't have the ability to call up my friend and go get a coffee and ignore it and surround myself with people.
Yeah. Well, and that makes me think of a conversation we had earlier, Molly. We live in a culture that is very tied to the day. We live in a day world. And in the day, things are very binary. It's either something is in light or it is in shadow. Something is good or it is bad. And it is hard for us to find that gray area because we've been so conditioned by the day. And conditioning is a bitch. So much of our conditioning lives in our subconscious in a way we cannot access. And we just become products of that conditioning unless you do the work to get a sense of like, what have I been conditioned by? What are the ways that I am operating in that are not aligned with my authenticity? And how can I let go of those things?
And it's hard because we can't always separate what is authentic to us and what isn't when conditioning is so ingrained. Like, no, I'm this way. I know I'm this way. So, but dig even deeper, like, are you or are you not?
Right.
Even things that seem simple.
But also in the day consciousness, so like night consciousness, everything is black. So there are no boundaries. There is no separation. It's very much, everything is nebulous. Everything is gray. And obviously we don't want, that's not energy we want to fully operate in either. But the stakes are very high in day consciousness because if you learn a piece about yourself or you discover something about yourself, we have the automatic inclination to say, is this good or bad? And then we want to fix it if it's bad. And then if we are something that needs to be fixed, then we must be bad. And it's this vicious spiral of assigning good and bad to everything when in the big scheme of things, it just is. And you get to do with that is what you will. But assigning a value judgment is very ego, and day consciousness is all ego. Night consciousness, day is ruled by the sun is our ego. Night consciousness is ruled by the moon, that is our intuition. That is also why we are pulled so far away from our feelings, why we're pulled so far away from the validity of the things that we just inherently know, our intuitive wisdom, our intuitive knowledge, the stuff that doesn't have facts or figures or evidence to back it up, but is just as powerful and valid as all of the things that we have tangible evidence for. And this is a time where we're sort of in that liminal space between day consciousness and night consciousness, just because we've experienced like an upheaval. And what we're moving through right now is sort of reconciling all of these big touchstones of our identity. Like the word productivity has come up and that's the world we live in. We live in a world that's driven by productivity. And now when we have linked so much of our worth, our value, and our identity to being productive, the rug has been pulled out from people because they're like, how am I a valuable person? How am I a worthy person if I can't show up for work and be busy and grind my gears and work myself to the bone? How can I show that I'm worthy? And now we are being asked to redefine what productivity means to us. If that's something that we're still unable to sever from ourselves, then creating a definition of productivity that works for these circumstances. Because if you're striving towards the productivity that we've always known, which is very much tied to capitalism, because being productive makes you money.
Money, right.
And then gets you clout, and then you have status, and then you have power.
Yes.
But I'm always the person who, I'll get a text from my friend and they're like, oh, I have all these things to do and I just want a nap. And to them, I say, I have a feeling that taking a nap is maybe the most productive thing you can do for yourself right now.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what's crazy? Sorry, Alyssa.
No.
Really fast. But oftentimes all you need and all they're probably searching for is someone in their life to give them permission to do it because they won't give themselves.
Yes.
I've been there.
No, I was going to say, I have friends like that too. I have friends that are like, I need to just get a billion hobbies right now because I don't know how not to be productive. And I have friends that are like, I don't know. And they feel isolated and they feel like they're the black sheep of everybody because they're not picking up hobbies, that they're just in their robes, they're asleep most of the day. And they're just taking a mental break. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong in any of that. I tried to remind all of them, just it's all right. Whatever you need to do to feel human right now is the right thing.
And that's self-care. Listening to yourself.
And listening to yourself. And that's I guess that's something I do in a lot of ways. I feel like, in a lot of times I feel like I have it down and I'm proud of myself for it. And then there are times where I'm like, why am I looking for someone else to give me permission to do what my body is telling me to do right now? Is it because I feel like they'll judge me for it? Or is that, which is really me judging myself for it? What is really going on there? Something as simple as taking a nap when you feel like, you have something to do, whether it's a big thing or not. It could feel, some days it feels so hard, the thought of responding to one email. It's not the fact of picking up my iPad and typing on it that seems hard. It's this mental thing of oh, then I have to form my thoughts and make it make sense and then send it to them and be professional. What?
Yeah.
Then it's a thing where it's okay, then don't do it. Don't do it today. They'll get the email tomorrow. It's just, but it's a daily thing. It's not, I don't think it's a destination that anyone gets to, but I think we're in a time now where we, like I said, we're all being forced to focus on that. Whereas previously it was, more people who chose to focus on that were focusing on it, because there were a lot of other options besides focusing on yourself. And now those other options are dwindling fast. And so it's like, we really have to look at these things and then look at the things that we thought that we were holding up, but really it was the structure of life that was holding these things up, not us, ourselves.
Yeah. And there are so many things, people are clamoring to get back to normal and like have some sort of semblance of control and, you pick things back up where they left off. Mm-hmm. And I truly feel like channeling your energy in that way not only does a disservice to you, but to all of us. Why invest your energy in a broken system? Capitalism is broken. This is what we are being taught right now. We've all been pushed into isolation, and every single thing that we were told we couldn't do, magically we can do. You can't work from home for XYZ. And all of a sudden everyone's working from home. Oh, we can't take this meeting on Zoom because of blah, blah, blah. Now everything is on Zoom. And we have been, it's like the curtain has been pulled back. And the way I'm seeing it, and I'm an Aquarius, so of course I'm going to see it this way, is that nothing is real. All of these like strong held, like, truths and beliefs and we can'ts and there's no way. None of it is fucking real. Yeah. So why channel your precious energy into something that's broken? And like how you reminded me of something, what you just said reminded me of something one of our previous guests said, but he said it off the episode, Kenneth Castillo. So he's a director, film director, but he was talking about how COVID has altered the structure of everything, but he's a filmmaker. So talking about Hollywood, and he's like, in a matter of days, like all of a sudden, the entire structure for how films are made, for example, has been completely changed within the industry, within studios. And he was saying details like only like 5 people are allowed in the room when they're filming. It's only the DP and like certain positions, right? Whereas previously, like a lot of people could wander internet. There were a lot of people on set, basically. And he's like, they made all these changes easily in a couple days. And why couldn't they have done that for when the Me Too movement started? He's like, that would have eliminated so much of this sexual predatory behavior in Hollywood. Like literally, if you can only have these people in the room and there's 5 people standing there and they're all watching what the other one's doing, that shit's not going to happen. But that wasn't a value. It's not a value when something. No. And so we know how people feel about female identified people.
Right. Well, and he just put it in such clear terms. And he's like, and of course people previously are like, oh, but that's like they would never make that change. That's a lot of work. Like, are you going to restructure the entire industry and how films are made? Oh, whoop, it's done. It's done since last week because there's a virus. We can figure it out. And like you're saying, Jordan, like things that we were told you could never do this job from home. You have to be in the office at least 12, 15 hours a day.
And now everybody's at home. Yeah.
Somehow, oh, look, it's all happening and the world is still spinning.
Yeah, we're afraid of adapting, but we're so capable of it. And that's
what this is showing us is everything that has been created can be recreated. Mm-hmm. Nothing is set in stone. Literally, the only thing set in stone is this earth. This is the only thing that we cannot recreate. Yeah. Everything we're doing on top of it is essentially meaningless if it's not working for everyone.
Yeah.
And my question is, I feel like, you were talking about like Aquarius and Aquarius energy during this time. And I wonder is there different signs that are reacting in not negative ways, but maybe extreme ways? Like are there signs that in your book, I don't know, it gets more complicated than just your sun sign, but like I feel like, I don't know, I'm very balanced with this and I don't know, I'm like feeling my Libra self, but like I have my anxious days, but for the most part, I'm like, I can do this. I'm making it work.
When it comes to this experience, I feel like more because we are kind of like with ourselves. A lot of us are operating on these like very survival based instincts. more of our chart comes out because more is at play. And also we're more aware of things because we're not so busy. And just to like maintain the like complexity and nuance of astrology, we all have all of the signs living inside of us. But I do feel like the people who have really heavy Virgo and really heavy Capricorn are having a very hard time, because Virgo and Capricorn, both earth signs, and like, I think earth energy doesn't necessarily do super well with change. I'm just leaving out Taurus because Taurus loves home, like just likes to chill. But Virgo and Capricorn energy is big fixer energy. And so there is this desire to fix their circumstances instead of accepting that this is where they are because this is where we're meant to be. And what is meant for us is not always comfortable. It's not always wanted, but it doesn't mean that it's not for us in one way or another. And I'm finding that Virgos and Capricorns are the people who are really trying to get back to normal, because this situation is bad and needs to be fixed, whereas normal life was good because it was comfortable, because it was, you know, predictable, and it was working. And now we've all been shocked into this new sense of reality. And I think what all of us, is, like I said, we all have some Capricorn and some Virgo within us in one manifestation or another.
Another reason to get your chart read by Jordan, so you can get all this information on yourself.
Exactly.
But what we all need to do is practice surrender, which is actually being supported right now. The planet Mars, which is the planet of action and impulse, and it's also a very ego-centric planet, is moving through the sign of Pisces. And if you look at the journey of Mars as he makes his way through the zodiac, he in Pisces is at the very end of his journey. And this is where the warrior Mars is asked to rest. The vision or the image I get when I think about Mars in Pisces is the warrior in meditation. And so this often fiery and impulsive and very outward focused planet that lives inside of all of us, for this brief period of time, the next, I think, 3 weeks. The next 3 weeks, Mars is in the sign of Pisces. And so our fire is a little bit tamed, and we are being supported in the action of surrender, because surrender is an action. It is a choice. It is also a place where we need to accept stillness. Stillness is not stagnation. Stillness is a choice. And so we are being asked to find stillness, come back to ourselves, and relinquish control, because we have no idea what is next. But if we relinquish control and live in the present moment rather than the depression of the past, the anxiety of the future, finding presence now is the only place we can really control anything. But it also readies us for what is to come. We aren't ready if we're dwelling on the past or living in the future. We just have to be open to receive what is coming for us. And what is coming for us is nothing any person who's living on Earth has ever moved through before. And we'll get to more details about that. But we all really need to practice the art and the act of surrender, which takes a lot of taming the ego, a lot of like humbling. And it's not easy, but we're not given anything we can't handle.
And do you have like advice, like how to do that? I mean, and obviously for specifically Virgo and Capricorn energy, like how they can do that, because my two best friends are a Virgo and a Capricorn, and that is so true. Like they are just fighting it, and I'm like, me and my other Libra best friend were like, we're all right, we can do it, It's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, yes, not that it's easy.
Yeah,
being in the moment, taking things one step at a time, and not relying on timelines, because we have all these projected dates. Lockdown will be ended this time. Things will start opening now. I have a very strong sense that this is not the end, and we will probably spend the duration of this year, and I think well into next year, in and out of lockdown or in and out of quarantine. That's what we're being told are the signatures in the sky. And if we are living for that timeline, we're living for that date when we can reemerge into the world, and that date keeps getting pushed back, or we keep having to come back home, then you're just it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're creating all of this feeling of being trapped because you're creating the limitations for yourself. When just surrendering, just like floating in the middle of the ocean, knowing that like, I don't know when I'll hit land, but I have a feeling it'll be eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because there's like, I don't know if it's the Aquarius part in me or where this part comes from, but like when I get the sense that shit is about to hit the fan in a big way, whether it's in a movie I'm watching, in like somebody's life, they're telling me what's going on in their life, or like right before this happened, like the night that Garcetti said the lockdown order, like March, I don't know, 16th or 15th or whatever. It was like this little mischievous creature inside me is like dying to see what, like so excited, but it's not like a vindictive, like mean spirited thing. It's like this like little mischievous giggly part of me that's like, oh my God, it's about to fucking explode. And I can't wait to see what happens. Like, even if I'm like caught in all of it, it's just like, I have this little thing in me that just like loves shit, like going unexpectedly. Not like I want everything to go terribly, but you know what I mean?
That is the Aquarius in us.
Yeah.
And I have a similar reaction. And like, I do not want to devalue or gloss over the like catastrophic effect that this pandemic is having.
Yeah, not at all. That's not what I mean.
But from like personal level, seeing everyone having to be at home and seeing all of this massive change. Yeah. To me, it was welcome. I don't know that that's the right word, but I know that this is what we need, whether we want it or not, because it was like we cannot continue operating in the way that we have. It cannot go on anymore. And what we needed was this massive, like, pause. Upset.
Yeah, it's like an excitement, not like you said, it has nothing to do with it. Like, yay, there's a pandemic. Like, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a virus or nothing to do with the deaths or, you know, I'm really not trying to diminish that, like you said, but it's like this thing in me that just knows like we can't sustainably exist like this. Like what is going to give, what's going to give, there's going to be something, your mind goes crazy. But then when you start to see like, oh, something is happening. And I don't know if I don't know what the word is, because it's not relief, because it's stressful. And like, I'm not like just great, this is great coasting through either. But I guess it's in a removed sense, it's relief, because it's like, oh, we needed to stop. We just needed to stop.
It feels necessary.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that we're going to spend a lot of the next few years sort of mourning the life we know, because a lot of what we are accustomed to and what we know no longer have a foundation to stand on come December 2020.
So let's go here now, because I want to hear what you see and everything for the upcoming years, months, whatever it may be.
Okay. So
here we go.
We're going to get back into the astrology of it all. So we talked about Saturn and Pluto colliding in the sky. We talked about Jupiter and Pluto colliding in the sky. We have one more major collision between the planets of Jupiter and Saturn. And in astrology, Jupiter and Saturn together are called the chronocrators. They are the keepers of time. And when they come together, they perpetuate the energy of our priorities as a culture, as an era. And they go through 200-year cycles where they come together every 20 years for 200 years in the same element. The last 200 years, they've come together in all earth signs, which has meant that our priorities as a culture have all been earth-based. And earth-based is very materialistic, wealth-based, structure, oppression, industry, corporations, hierarchy, government, blah, 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 all of the shit that we know.
Oh, it sounds so familiar.
Right? And in December 2020, December 17th, 2020, Jupiter and Saturn will be coming together at 1 degree of Aquarius, which ushers us into the age of Aquarius. And for the next 200 years, they'll begin to come together every 20 years in air signs, which means that our priorities are shifting from 200 years of Earth into 200 years of air.
Wow.
And it does this cool thing.
That's exciting.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, it does this cool thing where Jupiter and Saturn come together 200 years, but the second to last time they come together, so in 1980, they gave us like a little taste of what is to come with the next era. They came together in Libra. And for that 20-year period, we had the birth of ideas. We had the internet. We had all of this technology. Air rules technology. It rules ideas. It rules communications. It rules community. And we had the birth of the internet during that time. And then Saturn and Jupiter came together in 2000 in the sign of Taurus. And 2000 rolls around, we're immediately like, how do we make money off of this internet thing?
Yeah.
How do we monetize? Taurus is very money driven, very resource based. Mm-hmm. And so we had this massive burst and massive shift towards air priorities just for that 20 years. And now we have 200 full years where our priorities are now entrenched in air topics. And like I said, no one who is living on Earth has any idea what that will bring us, because no one who's living has lived in a time that is air focused. And
that's crazy that what are the chances, the percentage of people who ever exist on Earth, who did exist and will exist in a transition like that? It's crazy that we are actually us right now, we're 30, 31 years old. And it's hopefully we have long lives. And in that time, we could have spent almost 50-50, but hopefully longer, in between those two realms of we have 30 years of knowing what it's like in an earth realm, if you want to put it that way. And then the rest of our lives to witness the other. And what I am curious about, Jordan, is major shifts like that obviously don't happen overnight. They take time. So it's in your impression, do you think in the rest of our lifetimes, we'll be able to witness the difference?
100%. I don't think it'll be immediate. I don't think, January 2021 rolls around and everything's Aquarian.
Yeah.
But I hear the prickles of it now. Even just millennials in quarantine, in conversation with each other, we're why don't we just buy a plot of land and have a garden and take care of each other? That's Aquarian. Yeah. Communal, community, all of that is very Aquarius is also like a very active, like activism and altruism. And there is this inherent understanding of the collective, how my unique experience, my personal experience, lends to a larger picture. But I do think that there is a large population of people, cough, cough, rich white men. So like the people in power are going to have a really hard time with this. People of the sort of privilege that we have now, where privilege is very much denoted by your class and your race and all of these very earth-based things, all of these like very external things. And we're moving into a time, I think because of COVID, it'll happen sooner than later, where we're so used to instant gratification. We're so used to, I want a thing and I'm going to get that thing. But I don't think that's how things are going to operate anymore. And so we are sort of the gatekeepers, I think, our generation. And I think especially people of our age, people who are just moving through their Saturn return, which I believe all of us are just at the tail end of our Saturn return. And I hold this belief, I think most astrologers do, that our soul chooses to incarnate in this life, in this time in history, for a specific reason. So there's a reason we were born to like move through this shift. And it might be that we have something to offer the future, the next 200 years, and we have seeds to plant, so to say. But as far as like seeing the true manifestation of this energy, I would say we probably won't have a clear idea of what it will bring for like a decade, maybe. I do think that the planet Pluto is hanging out at the end of Capricorn, and Pluto takes about 20 years to move through a sign. So he'll be in Capricorn for another 4 years until December or until 2024. And then he moves into Aquarius too. And so I think that 2024 will definitely bring a very palpable shift.
And that's another election year, which is interesting.
It is. And I was talking to Molly about this earlier today. The astrology of this year lines up in a really like eerie way with the election, though I think it matters to us, obviously, in our well-being, who is president. But I think in the big scheme of things, it doesn't really matter, because the systems that both of these candidates and all of the people who are like aiming to be president are coming in with are the systems of Earth. And I think that anyone who becomes president is going to find over the next 4 years that it's going to be really, really difficult for them to operate in the way they've always been able to operate.
Yeah.
And I think that's
it's like a crumbling. Yeah, I think so too. Like, how do you know, because there can't be a clean cut shift in the way our government runs, so to speak. They're not going to be like, well, this is how things are now. Like, we're not like, we'll do away with the electoral college and all.
I mean, they could,
but as was proven, we could do anything we want because we're in charge of what we do.
Because it's all made up.
It's all made up. But the thing is, like you're saying, it's gonna be a crumbling and a transition, and whoever's in it next, as in starting in November for the next 4 years until you say there's that, till Pluto comes out of that shift, is going to be in the midst of that crumbling, like deep in it, whoever it is.
Yeah,
so interesting.
It's coming down.
I'm having an immense anxiety right now thinking about it. Like thinking about the election in this fucking dumpster fire of a year or whatever, however you view this year. It just brings me immense anxiety. And I just, God, I know, I just feel like if Trump is still president, this is just going to get really, really fucking bad.
Well, I think it's interesting what you said, Jordan, about how, what was it, the last time that this collision happened? I forget, Jupiter and what? It was when Saturn and Jupiter. The last time it happened was the AIDS epidemic, and the time before that was when
Saturn and Pluto.
Saturn
Right.
and Pluto. And the time before that was when Hitler came into power. And I do find it interesting that it lines up with, you
Trump.
know, with Trump and like major world leaders and just like major upsets in the way. And I, everybody has their opinion, whether you think he's great or you think he's terrible. It's for almost the same reason. It's because he was this different thing. And like,
Right.
I personally, obviously, I don't think it's a secret. I think he's terrible, but it's like the people who think he's great.
They wanted
would probably
change.
argue the
Right.
same point. Yeah, they wanted change too. And so it's this weird thing of like, it's weird that, but it's also not weird when you are an astrologer and you see it. But like hearing about it and having it validated by you or somebody that actually you're studying the science of it and where we are in the sky and how it actually lines up with things that are seemingly separate, like who we elect or world leaders or that kind of thing. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it definitely matters to us as a country and as people who are still operating under the guise of this broken government.
Yeah.
I think that we can all agree that like it's not working. What we've been doing isn't working. But the reason I say that it doesn't matter is more because it's not possible for things to operate the way they have been.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they're going to change no matter who is there.
Exactly. And I think in a lot of ways, like both Trump and Biden are kind of like figureheads for what we're releasing, what we're moving away from.
Right.
They're both white men in their 70s. Like, I mean,
it's just
that's exact. They're both in that sense,
like
they're exactly the same.
Right.
And
With two sides of the
even
same
though they're
coin or
very
something.
different, but like, it's also, you're right, Jordan. It's like they're two sides of the same coin, the
Yeah.
same coin that we've been flipping for 200 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who's it going to be this year? Who's going to be this? Oh, another white man, another white man, another white man. Oh, one black man. Oh,
Gee.
another white man. You know what I mean? It's like, what?
Well, and like, I think that the reason I feel so called to like share this insight and start the conversation about what could be is because we're moving through this shift that has so much uncertainty because no one has any idea of what it is. But ideas and communication and community are the foundation upon what the future will be built on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if we can start planting those seeds now and just like brainstorming, putting our heads together. I feel like brainstorming is like the perfect like Aquarian word because Aquarius energy is very cerebral, but there's also this need to share, to innovate, to renovate. And to be honest, like the astrology of next year isn't necessarily promising. It's not going to be a massive release come January 2021. It's not like, good thing that's over.
Yeah.
It's different, but it's not easy.
Well, because you don't go through something like this and then not have a come down or a spiral, a transition.
The thing is, this year, the theme of this year is karmic debt. We are paying karmic debt on a personal and collective level. And it's like a soul reckoning. We are being faced with our soul personally and collectively and being shown all of the parts of us that we have denied.
Mm-hmm.
But next year, the theme of next year, the difficulty and the dynamic of next year is very much wrapped into revolution and revolt. And it's a time when the people who practice surrender and practice presence and they're humbling their ego and knowing that they might know nothing, those are the people who are going to be at the front lines of this revolution. Like the energy that I'm feeling now is very much like when I was a kid, I would always say like I was meant to live in the 60s and like that whole, like the whole like peace not war, like the whole hippie vibe. I was like, I missed out on the time I was meant to be born for. But that time is exactly coming. Like that is what is coming up next. And if we do the work we are tasked to do now, to come home to ourselves, to learn how to care for ourselves so that we can care for each other, to untether ourselves from the conditioning of capitalism and productivity and the machine. If we can dismantle the machine, then we can revolt and revolutionize towards something that serves us all.
You are speaking to my Aquarius fucking heart right now.
I know.
It's just this, it's this really interesting mix of like levity and weight and seriousness with optimism and hope and relief. It's like this weird blend of all of those things that it's like, you know, good things don't come, they don't just fall in your lap. Like we have to all participate in what is to come, but having like talking to someone like you and like considering astrology, you know, or people get confused like, well, they can't tell the future. It's not future telling. It's not psychic. It's not fortune telling. It's going with like Jordan, you keep focusing on the themes of things. It's not like she can be like, no, this person's going to win this election. And that's not obviously what you're saying. It's like, these are the themes. And if we are a change is going to happen, right? No matter what we do. So if we want to have a say in it, participate in it, flow along with it, not get trampled by it, we have work to do. And that work changes from month to month or year to year. And if right now that work is for us to go inwards, take care of us, learn how to live without structure, learn how to not depend on capitalism because it's not coming back the way that it was, learn how to learn how to be more self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. And then as it looks like what you're saying for next year, it's like, then if we do that work this year, we're prepared for next year to actually step out front, like start to fight for things that we believe. And it's more what I find astrology to be is it's like a guide of themes almost like that you can ignore and go against. We have free will, but it's like, if you lean into it, you feel yourself being supported by the current of things, like the universe in a sense. And
the thing that I have like come to, and I want to like trademark this because like I'm setting up my website, come visit me at the end of the summer. Yeah. And this will be like but astrology, the way I have come to it is a blueprint for healing and guidebook to growth. And so it doesn't predict what is happening, but it does tell us what the energy and the themes are supporting us in. And some of that support is very flowing and very harmonious and very supportive. Sometimes that support is very challenging and very dynamic. But what astrology has told us, because there's a whole branch of astrology, it's called mundane astrology, which is truly the worst word ever, because it's the astrology of the collective, what we're all moving through. And mundane astrology, or my friend Drew is trying to recoin that term into universal astrology.
That makes sense. Yeah.
What we see in the patterns looking back, and that's how we gain insight into the future, is looking back, what happened when this planet moved through this sign 50 years ago, or what happened when these two planets came together, or they squared or whatever. What we learn is that change happens through challenge. Yeah. If we are always supported, then we fall into complacency and we don't grow and we don't heal because we don't have to.
Right.
And so what these challenging years are all about is asking us to up level and to really do the work required to not only survive, but to accept the gift of being alive, the gift of consciousness, the gift of being a human being. We could be a fly, we could be a fish, but we incarnated as human beings. And in doing that, we have to continue to do the work and not take for granted the gift of what we've been given by just being alive.
And I think that it's kind of also forcing us to, now that it's been so long and not just a few weeks in, the way, because technology, like you said, technology is an Aquarian type thing, it's like, it is simultaneously the coolest and the most terrifying thing that we have ever created. But what I find now, what I feel like is happening in the recent weeks is that it is slowly people are slowly, finally starting to use it to truly connect, not to appear to connect, not to show. I mean, that's still happening, but it's like I told you, Jordan, I've noticed like a difference in what I see on Instagram in the last couple of weeks. And the beginning of quarantine was like challenges, push-up challenge, take a shot challenge, everybody in their like sweatshirts, like this is what I look like at home. And that stuff is still going on. But what I'm seeing is more and more of a shift of like the Instagram lives go from like, for lack of better, more just like capitalist stuff like that to like mass meditations or, group workouts that aren't, where people's video screens are even off. It's not like, look at me. It's like, and Zoom family reunions. I've talked to my mom, my whole cousins, aunts, and uncles on my mom's side, all in a big Zoom call. Never done that before. Never. And it's like, I've talked to long distance friends more in this time than any other time. And it's just like, I do believe in the power of technology. I just hope that we continue, that what starts to happen is a shift. We actually use it to connect as opposed to disconnect, because we've been using it to disconnect for so long under the guise of calling it connection.
I mean, it has to be.
And essentially, technology, the internet, all of these things are simply expanded potential.
Yeah.
They bring us to each other in a way that in the tangible material world, we can't connect. Mm-hmm. And so it's a link. It's a really beautiful link. It's just how we utilize that. And I think, okay, so something that we can all do now, that we are all being supported in the next 5 weeks. Yeah, the next 5 weeks, the planet Venus is retrograde. And Venus rules, I think I said before, love, relationships, beauty, and values.
It's my planet.
And when a planet moves retrograde, so appears from the vantage point of the Earth to move backwards, the qualities and the energy of that planet is asked to move inward. And during this time, we are also gifted with a 7-long transit. So when a planet moves through a sign, it's called a transit. We have a 7-year-long transit of the planet Uranus, which is the planet of upheaval and surprise and innovation and genius, is moving through Taurus, the sign that is also assigned to values and resources. Mm-hmm. And the next 5 weeks is a very powerful portal for us to turn into ourselves and ask ourselves, what is important to me outside of the context of capitalism, from the safety of my home where I have no choice but to be? When at the end of the day, what do I value? What is my guiding light? And the work that we do now to turn inward and ask ourselves those questions, then when Venus turns direct again and starts to move forward, we can lead with our values and put that back into the world. But in this backwards motion, all of the things that we're trying to do outside of ourselves that align with Venus. So this is a time like Venus retrograde is terrible for relationships. We are all, because we're being asked to turn inward, our external relationships become really tense and really difficult, where communication can be a problem, relating, feeling seen, feeling loved, also the relationship to yourself. This isn't a time to tend to your external beauty. It's not a time to get a haircut. It's not a time to cut. It's not a time to necessarily get your nails done or whatever, because we're being turned to ask inward and say, what is beauty to us? Not in the context of what we've been taught, not under the guise of our conditioning, but what is beautiful to us? What is valuable to us? How can we reconcile our side of a relationship? Because a relationship is a 2 or 3 or 4-way street. It has everything to do with the people who are involved. And this is romantic relationships, platonic relationships, relationships of all types.
Yeah.
But getting clear and getting right with yourself is working on a relationship, because you are bringing yourself and your baggage and the shit that you project on other people and all of your insecurities and all of your past, and all of your conditioning, you're bringing that into your relationships. And now we're being asked to kind of like sever that like dependence and that attachment to the other person, and see like, how am I showing up in my relationships? Am I showing up in a way that projects some sort of toxicity? Am I operating in a space of blame?
Wow.
And really getting clear in a bubble, in a vacuum of like what you really bring to the table, so that when Venus goes direct, you can really show up in all of the things that we've learned. And this is a really, really fertile time for learning, because Venus is retrograde in the sign of Gemini, and Gemini is the sign of languaging. And so we have the opportunity as we turn inward to find language for what is important to us, for what we're showing up with, for what we value, for what we deem as beautiful, so that we can then go back out into the world. I mean, maybe not in the world, but we then carry with us the language to communicate what we need, what we want, what is important to us. Because communication is the most immediate bridge from you to me. It is the way that we synthesize all of the complexities and all of the like vastness and like ethereal and energetic, and all that shit is synthesized through language. And if we take the time to find the words to communicate clearly, concisely, and with compassion to those we're relating to, our relationships are going to be better.
Yeah.
Which is so important, because it's also, you're in quarantine with these people, so it's even heightened with that. So you're just really, well, depending on what your relationship is with, but that's so true for us, because it's like, we can be such a strong and stable couple, me and my husband, but like we will have those moments, and I sit and I'm just like, why am I like this? Like, what energy am I giving off, like, for myself and outwards? It's something that like I've been questioning more than I ever have before, because I was too busy with my life to even think to think about it, basically.
Exactly. And like asking yourself, what of the things that you do, whether it's external or internal, like how you talk to yourself or what you post on Instagram or getting your nails done, like what of the things that you do are actually for you? And what do you do for other people? Because now that other people aren't there to validate you for certain things, and we all, get in our egos like, I don't need validation from anyone. It's usually the people screaming that who do. But also it's like, you have a chance, we all have a chance to look at these things and be like, okay, if I stop doing this for a while, I'm still the only one, or, it's you and your husband in the house, or I'm the only one in the house, or whatever. And it's like, do I feel better without it, or do I actually want it, even though no one's witnessing it? And I think it's important to ask ourselves those questions. And it kind of reminds, I don't know if that's exactly, it kind of reminds me of what you're saying, Jordan, for the next 5 weeks, to like consider what we find beautiful, and not only external, like getting your nails done, but also like the way that you talk to yourself, or the way that you think about other people, or what you put out to the world creatively. Even it's like, am I, do you do this so that people say, oh my God, that's so cool? Or do you do it because you feel fulfilled just putting it out there?
It reminds me of like a tree falls in the wood, and it makes a sound.
Yeah.
I'm messing it up, but you know what I mean? Like, did it actually happen?
Life. I'm locked down alone. I haven't seen a familiar face in months. I haven't felt the touch of another human being in months. And like that part's difficult. But to be honest, I don't think I could be quarantined with anyone else, because the things that are coming up for me, and the shadowy parts of myself that are being revealed, and the work that I know based on my understanding of astrology, the work that I need to do in isolation. That's the environment that serves me best. And I don't have a choice, but I know that I'm going to ride this out as long as I have to. And I'm going to continue to show up for myself
Mhm.
because I value myself.
Yeah.
I value my wholeness, my well-being in a way that has no bearing on anyone else. And that's what I've learned in this time is like, I take care of myself because I love myself.
Mhm.
Yes.
Not because I'm supposed to. And it's like, when it comes to beauty, especially, the idea of beauty is so conditioned. We are constantly bombarded with this is beautiful, this is not, this is beautiful, this is not. And being completely away from everyone else where there's literally no one to see me. It doesn't matter what I look like externally.
Yeah.
And I think that this is also a time where we should be very discerning about the media that we're consciously taking in. This is a
agree.
time where like
Yes.
any Instagram account that doesn't align with you, doesn't make you feel great, even if it makes you feel fine, if it doesn't make you feel great, unfollow. You can always refollow them.
Oh my God, I went on the biggest unfollowing bin before quarantine, but like it was the exact same mentality where I was like, it's not that I don't like these people. It's like, I don't want to log on to Instagram and get any sense of like anxiety or
Yeah.
any kind of like inferiority complex or any kind of like feeling like I should be doing this or I don't want any of that in my life coming from random people's Instagram. If it's coming from anywhere, it's coming from me and I'm going to deal with that. But I don't want to log on and feel that way. And
Yeah, I unfollowed a lot of
important.
celebrities.
Yeah, it's like an important distinction, what you said, Jordan, because it's like, it doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to unfollow this person because she's an asshole, or it's not about that. Like, it's not even about the quality of that person. It has nothing to do with them. In fact, it's just, what do you feel when you look at these images? Like, that's all it is. And when I started mindfully doing that, I turned it, it takes a couple weeks for the algorithm, whatever, it checks on what you click on and all that. It just turned into this beautiful feed that I like go to for inspiration. It's like, it's just imagery and colors and textures and artists and photographers. And I'm just like happy.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not that, why would we want it?
Well, and like going back to the idea of self-care, that self-care, those are boundaries. And boundaries, I think, are the bread and butter of self-care. Knowing what fills you up, what contributes to your well-being, and what deteriorates your well-being. And it's not about the thing itself. It's about you. We all have our unique experiences. We all bring our own insecurities and our own limitations and our own like familial conditioning to the world. And some things are triggering to us in ways that they're not to others. And it doesn't mean that those things are bad. It just means that I need to set a certain boundary. I need to keep that at a certain distance to maintain my well-being so that I can continue to care for myself and thus care for others.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like if I see somebody, certain people have that effect on you. We see them in real life, or you go to a party and they're there and you're just like, oh God, like eye roll. That happens, and that's going to happen in person, but you're not really running across those people. Well, definitely not now because we're at home, but like in general in
Daily.
life, it's not like you're going to parties 24/7 and seeing the same person. So, but Instagram, you might. So then it's like so many people that like, I think they're nice people. I'm acquaintances, friends with them, but I'm just like, I'm fucking annoyed with you. When I see your page, I'm just like, ugh. And why do I need that? It doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do me any good. And, no harm meant, but it's just like for self-preservation. But yeah, this is something, it sounds like the next 5 weeks, especially, if we want to actively utilize the energy that is out there right now, that we all need to be focusing on that.
Yeah. And like with some more Venus work, might as well like lay it all on you, do with it what you will.
Yeah.
But this is also a time to really reevaluate the stories you tell yourself. So because Gemini is all about language and Gemini is the messenger, we have the opportunity as we're turning inward on ourselves and reevaluating our relationship to ourselves. What are the stories that we've created for ourselves? What are the narratives we tell ourselves in relationships? I'm needy, or I'm independent, or all of these things that we've deemed ourselves to be, really like gathering those stories and reading them through a curious lens and asking yourself, do these stories align with my authenticity? Do they feel good to me? Do they feel right to me? And if they don't, how can I rewrite these stories given this Gemini energy that's so fertile and rich with vocabulary and language and words? How can I rewrite these stories so that I'm telling myself stories that feel true to me, that feel aligned for me, rather than holding on to old narratives that keep you in the same pattern? This is any retrograde is sort of like a pattern breaker. So we get the opportunity every 2 years, Venus retrogrades every 2 years, to really break our patterns. And this is a particularly great one because it's so cerebral. It's not nearly like the last Venus retrograde was in Scorpio in the fall of 2018. And I imagine if we all did like a little bit of reflecting on that time, we'd be like, fuck, that was wild.
Yeah.
Because Scorpio is like such intense energy and it's very psychological. It's very like deep and shadowy and seedy. And so we were navigating that like muck. But Gemini, like when I think about Gemini, I think of bubbles. Like I think it's effervescent, it's light, it's curious, it's fun. And so we have the opportunity from like a less heavy place to do all of this work in a way that like, once we actually sit down and do it, it might be inspiring. It might be kind of fun to like relearn ourselves in this way. And even
like
if it's not fun, we still have to do it.
Yeah. And like to also take back the control of those narratives that however they were placed on you, limiting beliefs from other people or from yourself growing up, but like to really be like, which stories do I want to retell, recreate?
Yeah, because we're always our mind's defense mechanism for creating understanding where we don't have understanding is to make up a story about it. Like we all know that like you have a crush on someone, you text them, you don't hear back from them. And then you've created this entire narrative in your head that's like, oh, they don't like me, or like, I must have done something, or like, we create these stories because uncertainty is so, feels so destabilizing to us. So to maintain like some sort of semblance of stability, we create stories. And then if we're not conscious of those stories, they become our reality because our perception is reality. And if we're living in the stories of that we've created out of uncertainty, rather than just surrendering to like, I don't know, so I'm not going to know kind of vibes.
And before we let you go, I'm like kind of curious about the ramifications of not taking these next 5 weeks or even like the next year, of our, rewriting our stories and trying to be, as conscious as possible of our authenticity. Like, what are the ramifications of not doing that for next year in that, rebellious kind of energy that you were talking about before? Like, is there like because it sounds positive to me, but I wonder if there's like, it could be also negative.
Well, I don't know that ramification is the right word.
Okay.
Because astrology is just context. Free will is the vibe. You can do whatever you want.
Gotcha.
But it might become more difficult to participate in the future, or it might just become more difficult in your relationships because you haven't taken the time to do your own shit.
Yeah. And like more difficult to adjust to the changing world.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like doing the work, turning inward, like facing yourself, journaling, boundaries, all of the self-care stuff that I like live and die by is work. But I do believe it not only makes your life better, but allows you to open yourself up to thrive, and not thrive in a material sense. Because if you ask, any rich person if they got rich and they got happy, the answer is always going to be no, because that is our limiting belief, is that like money equals happiness or success or whatever. But what I feel like lends to happiness and success, and that the energy of thriving is wholeness. And this is the work that brings us into wholeness. It's healing, it's hard, it's pain, it's pleasure, it's all of it. Everything is everything. And everything is a symptom of being alive.
Yes.
And I think that it's our responsibility, if we want to shift from surviving to thriving, that this is that bridge, that self-care and the internal work and being with ourselves and reconciling all of the pieces of our existence that brought us here. That's that bridge. But I also will say that, like, 8 years from now, Venus is going to retrograde in Gemini again. So it kind of, the thing about astrology is it's all about cycles. And so whatever you don't do now, it'll come up later. Like with Saturn return, if you don't deal with the work of your Saturn return, one, I imagine that is a very painful couple years for you. But if you neglect to do that work at 33, it'll come right back around.
Yeah.
And the themes, because it's cycles, you always, in one way, shape, or form, end up in the place you are now. But ideally, you end up in this place, this new place, with old wisdom, so that you can make the most of any given circumstance, because you know yourself well enough. You've been conscious and mindful through all of the other life experiences, all of the other challenges and heaviness and weight that just existence has put on us. And that's how we make the most of these cycles. And we are always in the middle of multiple cycles all at once. And the beautiful thing about a cycle, there's no beginning and end. You can start wherever. And so if this is, if this Venus retrograde doesn't work for you, and you're not able to do the work of this Venus retrograde, that's okay. But I will say it'll probably be a little bit more difficult, especially because Mars retrogrades in the fall, and that's going to be a fucking rough one.
Oh no.
Well, it's like what you said, Jordan, about, you have to go through the hard stuff to get to the good stuff. And it really, however deep you're willing to dig, your peaks will be equal to that in height. And it's just like, I remember being watching home videos recently of my family when I was a child.
Oh, I'm obsessed with them.
It's so fun. And I remember we were at the sand dunes in Colorado somewhere that, I don't know where. Anyway, sand dunes, big, huge sand dunes. It looks like you're in the middle of the Sahara. And we're like climbing up them. I'm like 4, and we stop, and at every place that we stop and look around, I ask if I can slide down yet, because it's like when we get to the top, we get to like go just on our butts and slide down. And it's like sledding. And my dad and my mom are like, not yet, Molly. Like we got to go to the top. It's going to be even higher when you get. And I can see it in my face. I'm like, I sit down for a minute, kind of pouty, and I like roll my eyes, and then I like, they're not stopping me. Like I could have slid down, but I'm like looking around, and I remember that. I remember being there and being like, looking up ahead and being like, okay, but if I make it up there, then I get to slide all the way down here. And it's like, it's kind of like that. It's like, okay, this hurts. This is uncomfortable. This is not fun. But if I get to the bottom of it, then there's a top that's that much higher.
Yeah. And once you get to the bottom, you got to climb back up.
Yep.
And that's the cycle, is like, you have these periods of time of hardship and of challenge where you're having to climb a sand dune, which I've climbed a sand dune before, and it's not easy. It takes a lot of effort.
Oh my God.
Knowing that at the end of this journey of work, and at the end of like the challenges, come the opportunity to slide down and enjoy that flow.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean nothing is forever. The only thing that we ever have to count on is change.
Yes.
So the thing that gives me peace in these circumstances, though I'm like pretty good in isolation, I'm like living my best hermit life.
Yeah.
The only thing we ever have to count on is change. So I know that this isn't forever. The good things are not forever. These challenging things are not forever. it is always changing. Everything will
Yeah.
always be different than it once was.
And all you can do is keep strengthening yourself and learn the lessons as they come, because although they are cycles, like you say, if you do, you do as much work as you can in this cycle, let's say, the next time it comes around, it's not like, oh, I already did that work, I don't need to do it. It's like, no, now it's new work with the same theme. It is a lot like sand dunes in the sense that they're not like mountains. They don't stay the same, that they change and the wind blows and they get steeper and bigger and smaller. And so when you get to the bottom, you have to climb back up. It's a different mountain, but you still have to go back up. And it's kind of like that with it. 'Cause I think sometimes people get complacent and like, I did that hard work and I've made it. I'm here. I know myself. And it's like, no, you never get there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you get to climb up that next peak with the muscles you gained from the last one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh God.
Jordan, I cannot thank you enough for just
Yes.
being here, for
Love
being
you
so open, giving us your time and your energy
And your wisdom.
Oh my God.
I am so thankful. I mean, God, I felt like I was seeing myself in so many of everything you were saying, because it's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure other people can relate. It's like this time in Gemini now, and I'm feeling like, fuck, like I feel like I don't want to communicate, but I do. It's like, I feel like I don't know what it is. It's like judging myself for not being there with like what you were just saying, like not completely knowing myself yet. And I'm like, God, I'll never be there. So why do I try? It's like, I'm just going to be present, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
It's all over
And
the
also
place.
like understanding yourself. We were born with all of these complexities for a reason. This is our journey. And I think if we come into pure understanding of ourselves, like at 31 years old, what the fuck do we have to do for the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
So true.
Thank you so
It's an
much,
adventure.
Jordan.
It's a quest.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus, here we go. I mean,
We're all in it together.
we are.
Yeah, it's
and that's
true.
why I love, talking with people like you, Jordan, and Molly, of course, because it's like this podcast has been such an amazing opportunity to stay connected and to keep this going and I don't take it for granted. I'm so thankful you're here to talk to us again.
I know. Thank you so
We are
much. And,
so
and
damn
for people
lucky.
listening, you obviously already know who she is, but seriously, book another reading with her.
Yes.
And like we've mentioned, there's infinite types of readings. It's not like you can get your regular chart. I mean, I want to speak for you, Jordan, but like I don't think people realize how many different angles you can come at that from, right? Like your year ahead, for example, like your upcoming year, or the world in general's year, like she just talked about with us, or your relationship with someone else. I mean, there's so many different types. So please, on Instagram at Jordan Shomer, Shomer. And your website, you said, launches next month?
At the end of the summer, I think.
The end of the summer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to keep that blasted on our Instagram too.
Yeah.
So.
And also find me on Instagram, because I think starting this Sunday, I'm not sure what time exactly, but I think I'm going to do just like a weekly Instagram live where I just like show up and maybe bring someone else on with me and just chat about what they were moving through that week and how it aligns with the astrology of the week. It might be a question and answer, kind of just whatever the Sunday brings us. I just want a space to continue to talk about astrology in a way that is practical and empowering and sort of moves us away from that very surface and like bullshit, just like sun sign astrology.
And in a way
like,
that like connects everybody.
Exactly. And that's what it is. I feel like we're all so separated, and this is the time when we are asked to come back together. And so if I can do that by just like showing up for half an hour or whatever on Instagram Live on a Sunday, then like, I'll do that. So come hang out with me, ask me questions, maybe just come on and chat.
Yeah.
with me.
And then Sunday being the 31st.
Yes. But I think I'm going to do it every Sunday.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe it'll go on my Instagram Live. I don't know. I've never done a live before. So
Me neither.
We're all going to experiment
exciting.
together.
But yeah, that'd be a great, it's like the little mini things that you find, this lack of routine. If there's something that you love where it's like, Oh, Jordan does her things on Sundays. Yes, for that half an hour, I know where I'm going to be, and I know I can't wait for those because it's like this is so much information right now, but it's not like the sky is staying the same. It's changing. So if every week I get a little bit of grounding from you, I'd be so grateful.
Yeah.
Well, and like for example, this week was like this Thursday to Sunday was like really soupy and like mushy, and I was feeling it really hard, and I'm alone. And I would love to just show up on Instagram Live, bring another person on here and be like, did you feel what I felt?
Yeah.
To like validate that with a little bit of like astrological context, because we're also in this space where anything that isn't content is bad. And I think that rather than putting a value judgment on our experiences, just getting curious about what they are rather than trying to fix them, knowing that everything is going to change. So I'd rather show up and be like, oh yeah, like you were feeling that way because Neptune was really challenging Venus and Mercury this week. And so of course you're going to feel like confused and out of sorts, and like it'll pass.
Yeah. And even as somebody, if you're not in the conversation, but you're logged onto the live, you're watching this conversation happen, you can, I mean, it's like a sense of feeling not alone. If you're like, oh my God, that's why this has been happening to me this week, seemingly unexplainable, but it just, like you said, just context and giving people validity to these waves, this wild ride that we're on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Because I love astrologers and I love Jordan so much. Our charity nonprofit, we're shouting out OPA again. It's the Organization of Professional Astrology. They're a nonprofit organization that advances the cause of professional astrology by helping students and practicing astrologers get the information, insights, and experiences they need to foster their understanding of astrology and launch and enhance their development as students or practitioners. They focus on making astrology accessible, credible, and sustainable. In practice, this means celebrating astrology's diversity, making good quality content available to members, elevating standards of practice, and providing guidance for those who choose to practice professionally, sustain themselves financially. So to donate and learn more, please visit opaastrology.org.
Awesome.
Love
Jordan,
it.
I love you so much.
I love you too, Jordan. Thank you so much. Please reach out to her at Jordan Shomer. And check us out too. We're at the SOS Pod on IG and Twitter, the SOS Pod. Subscribe and please rate us and review us on
Please
Google
leave us a
or
review.
Apple. Yeah, and on YouTube.
Oh, I said, please leave us a review on Apple. Yeah.
I haven't checked if we've gotten whatever. No one cares. But we're on YouTube too, so you can see this conversation in person. Well, no, you can see us on Zoom as people. Oh gosh, what time is it? Thank you so much again, Jordan. We love you so much. And here's to turning meltdowns into magic.